All right, welcome to episode 2, chapter 2 of Your 2024 Story. Today, we are going to be talking about setting or the power of SMART goals. I know you've heard the acronym SMART before, and I want to bring hopefully a new light to each one of the letters of the word SMART. We're going to actually make it smarter goals and talk about how to make them even smarter, but we're going to break down each step of making goals. Now, I also look at this as coming up with a game plan. When guests come to the resort, we see it all the time. It's an amazing experience, and at the end of the week, you feel like you can do and accomplish anything. So, if you've ever survived a week of Movara, you know that feeling of feeling invincible, which is amazing, which is what we love. It's the special part of Movara. It's actually one of my favorite things that happens at the resort. Guests leave the resort knowing that they're capable of way more than they thought. So they leave excited, and I say this all of the time, every week, or anytime I have an opportunity to talk with guests, that it means what happens at the resort means nothing if we don't go home with a plan. So to me, setting SMART goals, when I go through the SMART acronym with you, really is essentially coming up with a plan to be successful and really breaking those goals down and simplifying those goals. To me, a goal is just a dream unless we break it down to specific things. So we want to not just have a goal, but have a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant. Now, oftentimes I've also heard it referred to as achievable, but then realistic, which achievable really has to be realistic, but I like the word relevant. And we're going to talk about what that means. And then time bound is super, super important because if we just have this goal of like, okay, this time next year, I want to be this. Well, we all know how fast a year goes by. In fact, oftentimes it's kind of scary. A guest will come in and it literally feels like they were there a month ago. And I've had guests say, well, it's been 10 years since I've been there. I'm like, oh my goodness. So we all know how fast time flies. And if we aren't having a time, a due date, if you will, and due dates are actually extremely important for somebody with my type of personality. This is something I'm also going to be just briefly mentioning today, and I'll mention throughout the other episodes, because as I have worked with thousands of different individuals over the past 22 years, I have really realized how unique and different each individual is and how important it is to understand your unique personality, because what works for one personality, for example, my personality does really, really well with the due date. And I almost have to say, okay, tell somebody this is the date that I'm going to get this specific thing by. In fact, we just hired an executive assistant to help me stay on track with these due dates and hold me accountable to these different goals that we have as a company. So I'm going to break down each one of these smarter acronym or letters with you, and then we're going to talk about identifying obstacles and create strategies to overcoming those obstacles. Really, it comes down to simplifying. In my opinion, the simpler, the better. You've heard the keep it simple, stupid truly is a smart thing to do. And there's a reason why you hear it a lot. We're going to also talk a little bit about the importance of accountability in our goals. And this can be a scary thing. A lot of guests or individuals, when I am talking with them and we're setting up these goals and these plans and we get to the accountability part, they're like, I think I'm good. I'm good. However, I will tell you probably the number one thing that we hear when our guests call the resort that they're looking for is accountability. They say, I just need somebody to hold me accountable to showing up. And oftentimes people will say, well, now, do you have to go to every class? Do you have to go to every hike? And they want to hear us say yes. Now, we tell our guests that, listen, our goal is to make sure that you have the best experience possible. So we actually take roll at all of our classes and our hikes, but it's not to get upset or mad at a guest. It's just to make sure that they have a great experience. And the accountability has been one of the things that has really separated our resort apart from every other resort that's out there. We tell our guests that we want them to get their money's worth. They're paying a lot of money for this, and we want them to leave feeling amazing. And we know, I am 1,000% confident. Now, I shouldn't say 1,000. 99 point. Well, it depends on the individual, but for most individuals, the more they participate, the better the experience they have. There definitely are exceptions, which is totally. In fact, just this last week I was talking with a guest, and she's been coming for probably the last 10 years yearly, and sometimes multiple times a year, and she's at a different point in her life. In fact, I told her, I said the hard part for her, the challenge is to not go to everything and mentally be okay, because sometimes people have a hard time modifying. And the thing that we're going to also talk about is celebrating small wins. It's so important for us to, again, simplify and then recognize those small wins that we are having. So let's just talk about the specific. So in our journal prompt this week and in the workbook, if you got our newsletter with chapter 2, it talked about taking 3 goals, for example. And I would suggest and recommend taking one of a goal in each of the areas of emphasis of health and nutrition and weight, or health, fitness, and weight loss. So maybe making a goal for movement, maybe making a nutrition goal, and then maybe making a mindset goal. But really, you can take whatever 3 goals that you would like to make, and then really go through each one of these and say, okay, instead of just saying, I'd like to get fit, well, okay, what does that look like? What does that mean? And break it down so that it's more specific. So instead of being broad, break it down until it's very, very specific goal of, maybe I want to be able to walk a mile within a certain amount of time, or I want to be able to touch my toes and become more flexible, or do X amount of push-ups on my knees or on my toes. Break it down and be specific with your goals rather than vague. So again, you could take nutrition and say, instead of I'm just going to start, I want to be healthier. Well, what does that look like? What does that mean? Does that mean that you're having a vegetable at every meal? Does that mean that you're tracking your whatever it is you want to track? Does that mean you're drinking a certain amount of ounces of water every day? Does that mean for everybody it's different? And when I say simplify, I mean simplify. With our Movara Home program, our guests, they choose a nutrition goal at the beginning of every week, and they make it individual. And we really suggest and recommend, I always say, make it so simple you can do it, because there is something with the dopamine effect of checking a box that just is satisfying. And it's, again, celebrating the small wins. When we make a goal so unrealistic and we just keep missing it day after day and week after week, we just, we beat ourselves up, because who likes to not be able to reach that goal every single day? So really breaking it down to a specific goal that we can go to the next is we can measure. So again, going back to maybe doing a mile in X amount of time, or doing X amount of push-ups, or being able to do the full stop sign. I love that goal. I love do the full stop sign in a certain amount of time. I love a 5K. I mentioned in chapter 1 or episode 1, I mentioned that we used to do a 5K every single week, and I loved that guests started being aware of oh, wow, maybe I could do it a little bit faster. Maybe I could try a 10K. And they realized they could do more. And it doesn't have to, you're not running the whole thing all the time, and you can walk the whole thing. But, that's a really amazing goal to set, of even walking. Maybe if a mile is hard right now, then we start with, hey, we have a guest who, we've had guests over the years who, even walking without a walker was a challenge, and making that your goal of walking from this point to this point, and being able to do incline. So there's so many different ways where we can break it down to our specific goals. I think one of the worst things we can do is compare where we're at now with anybody else. And it can be detrimental, truly. There's a quote that comparison is the thief of joy. And I truly believe that if we want to be successful, we have to set our goals that are specific to ourselves. You know, one of my, what do you call them? I wouldn't say idol. I'm a fanny. I'm a fanny of the Food Nanny. I actually love the OG Food Nanny as well. It's a Liz. I don't even her. I know her as the Food Nanny. And both her mom and herself are called Liz, or their name's Liz. And one of the things, you know, that she promotes is having your kitchen clean every single night. And, you know, for a while I'm like, oh, I just need to have my kitchen every night. And then I struggled with it. And then I felt bad. I'm like, okay, that's just maybe not something that is important to me. So although she loves it, and I think it's great, maybe it's not. I actually prefer going to bed and doing it in the morning. So you want to do what is going to make that you want it, something that you want to do. So when you're setting your goals, remember to not compare. And, you know, what somebody else is doing is not necessarily what is the expectation. So sometimes in comparison, we look at the place where somebody is and how they got there, and think that we have to get there the same way. And that's just not true. That's not the case. We want to be able to set the goal that we actually want, and it is going to look different. I think I'll share this quote now, and you're going to hear me share it a million times probably throughout these episodes, that the frustration comes from an unmet expectations. So if we're constantly frustrated, then it's the expectation of what it's supposed to look like. And we need to get rid of what it's supposed to look like first and foremost. So I hope that as we're setting our goals, we can really avoid copying the path of how someone else got there. We can admire where somebody is. And I certainly love, like I said, I love what the Food Nanny really represents, and it's cooking at home. You know, one of their cooking for your family because they're worth it is their motto. And I love that. I think it's important, but you know, it just looks different for me and how I'm going to get there. So again, specific, measurable, make sure. Now, one of the common ways to measure success when it comes to health, fitness, and weight loss is the scale. Do we want to go there? Do we really want to go there? But I think we need to. And we're going to go there. In fact, well, we've been doing it for 22 years now at the resort. We weigh every guest when they come in on Sunday nights, and we weigh every guest when they leave, depending on when they're leaving, either Saturday or Sunday. And, you know, I've contemplated, because I hear in the industry how detrimental the scale is, yet everybody wants to know what they weigh. And I've thought about this, believe you me, for a lot. I've thought about the scale a lot. And we talk about having a healthy relationship with food. We talk about having a healthy relationship with exercise. And I'm going to suggest the concept of having a healthy relationship with the scale. Because it's a scale. And, you know, I say this very carefully because it's the industry I work in. I know better, and I have gotten on the scale, and I get it. It can be challenging. It can be frustrating. And I hope that as I talk about the achievable goal, and I'm going to try and talk about it quickly and very to the point and poignant, to a point where it can be a game changer in your goal setting. But when our expectations are accurate, or I'm going to just put this out there. We get rid of expectations. The frustration goes away. Now, the scale can be a way to measure. And I do think that if we can have a healthy relationship with the scale and we can really understand the reality of weight loss, we could weigh every single day. In fact, I do believe it's important to weigh regularly. I'm just going to say it. I know there are going to be some that say I don't want to because it messes with me and then I feel bad and then it just derails me, and I get it. Believe you me, I totally get it. But I promise, as you hang with me and as you try to fully understand the reality of weight loss, this scale is not going to have power over you. It's not going to affect you. You can get on and you can use it as a tool, because I promise you that as you begin to live the story that you want to be living and moving and changing your nutrition and your mindset, the scale will move. Now, and I'm going to say this, and I know everybody's going to say, oh, I know, I get it. And it's interesting because I'll say it and I feel like people get it, but then they don't. Then I hear them. So for example, I teach the math of weight loss, and I'm going to briefly brush on it today. There'll probably be an episode that I maybe go more in depth of it, but truly this is when we talk about achievable goals, this is really what it is. But I talk about the math of weight loss and I literally mathematically break it down. And I talk about realistic goals, and I'll have guests say, oh yeah, I get it. And then 4 days later, they get on the scale and they're like, oh my gosh, I only lost 3 pounds. And I'm like, were you even listening in my lecture? Seriously. Like, mathematically, it's not even possible, yet they're mad that didn't happen. I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, help me understand this. So I really, without having achievable goals, you're setting yourself up to be, you're not just frustrated, but you're setting yourself up to fail. In a miserable way. And in episode 1, I talked about, there's really no such thing as failure, but you're almost, I think, subconsciously sabotaging yourself, because you're thinking like, oh, this is different. And in fact, literally every week I hear, oh, I only lost 2 pounds. And I'm like, oh my goodness, people. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about achievable. And I'm going to give you just the broad overview. I don't have my whiteboard. I'm not going to go through examples. And it honestly really is simple. Now, I'm going to say this, it's simple, yet in my lectures, I go over this and then I'll ask somebody to show me their math and they don't know how to do it. So it actually is extremely simple. So pay attention with me right now. If you're driving, make sure that you're not distracted. If you're exercising, maybe walk for a second, and really pay attention. Give me just a few minutes, because this is a game changer when you're setting your goals. So it's extremely hard to argue the fact of why America is overweight. Everybody, when I talk about this, they're like, oh yeah, yep, this is why. Well, we're sedentary and our portion sizes are ginormous. Now, oftentimes people say, well, it's the types of foods that America, there's this big thing right now where people are talking about how even M&Ms are different in other countries. And I believe that that's true. And I think that definitely is a factor, but come on, you cannot argue that the quantity of food that we consume, and I'm just going to say it, if you think differently, you're fooling yourself. You just watch anybody, myself included. I can consume more than my body is expending very easily every day if I'm not mindful. So if you believe differently, you may not want to listen to the rest of this. And we can agree to disagree. And I do understand and I agree with the types of foods do matter. Absolutely. But every fad diet out there is eliminating some type of intake. So if you're like, well, it's all about macros, it's all about protein. There's been this huge push on protein for a lot of years now, which, when I was going through school, I will never forget learning that factually, Americans are not lacking protein. And this push on protein, again, it's a vital mineral, it's a vital nutrient for sure. And can some maybe do better with more? For sure. But most people are not lacking, and there's this push on extra protein. I'm going off on a tangent, sorry. I'll finish this tangent, then we'll go right back to it. But this push on protein is eliminating, probably usually carbohydrates. But the push is like, oh, I'm going to eat more protein because I need more muscle. Guess what? Protein does not build muscle. It rebuilds muscle if you're lifting weights. So I'm going to end with that little tantrum that I just went on. But if you're lifting weight, if you're not lifting weights, you don't need more protein. Okay. So again, there's a lot of different beliefs on, why maybe we're overweight. But I think it's pretty darn hard to argue that as a whole, most people are consuming more than they're expending because we are extremely sedentary, which I kind of enjoy my washer and dryer, and I love the modern conveniences that we have. And anyway, so we can, if you want, get a high physical labor job. Absolutely. And some people are doing that. I think it's great. But unfortunately, most of us don't have that luxury. So having said that, I was on my soapbox for a little bit, and hopefully I got my point across a little bit. But so I teach this concept of setting realistic expectations using a financial budget. Now, I've been teaching this for 19 years now, and I teach the math of weight loss using a financial budget. And I really love this concept because whether or not we're good at it or we like it, we all understand financial debt. Ironically, America's in a huge financial crisis as well. But they're very, very, very similar. We spend more than we make, and we consume more than we burn. And at the end of the day, we're increasing our debt. So we know, this is factual, there are 3,500 calories in 1 pound. So if I have 10 pounds that I want to lose, take the weight that you want to lose, times it by 3,500 calories. That is your caloric debt. That debt has to be paid off. I'm sorry, you can slice and dice it however you want, but at the end of the day, unless that number is 0, you won't reach your goal. Now, there's so many factors to this. I'm teaching this fast because, muscle definitely burns more than fat burns. And that's a whole nother topic and conversation. Unfortunately, not a ton more. Well, it actually burns 3 times as much, but it's hard to gain as much muscle as, to be able to be eating a ton of quantity of food. When our guests weigh in, typically, I would say 99% of the time, it always has the individual as having a lot of muscle, but just excess body fat. So we want to be able to lose the fat and maintain the muscle and potentially gain muscle. So, and again, that's another little topic, side note. But what we burn minus what we take in, at the end of the day, whatever's left over is either adding to your debt or chipping away at that debt. So just to make this really fast and simple, if I am burning, let's say 2,000 calories a day, which our bodies have what's called as a BMR, basal metabolic rate. It's the amount of calories your body burns at rest. So I burn about 1,500 calories. It's based off of your height, your weight, your age, male, female, and your muscle. And it's a range. Well, no, it's not a range. It's a guess. It's an educated guess. You can do a gas analyze test that's going to be more more exact. But even then, it's a good guess of what we're burning. So I burn about 1,500 if I were to sit here all day long. I wish talking or thinking actually burned a lot of calories, but Standing up burns a little bit more, walking burns a little bit more. The higher your heart rate is, the more you burn. So daily activity, if you're active and on your feet all day long and you're doing manual labor, it'll be more. And if you exercise, you burn about 100 calories a mile. That's pretty vague. It's generalized. And the shorter you are, the less it is. The more weight you have, the more it is, etc. So there's a lot of devices that you can wear that will give you an estimated amount of calories that you're burning every day. I do love, there's a reason why the suggestion of, taking more steps a day, but because that's just going to increase your out. It's about, I want to say 2 miles for every 2,000 calories. I can't remember off the top of my head, but, so the more we can move, the higher the out is. Now, your in is what you consume, food and drink. So if I'm burning 2,000 and I'm taking in 1,500 collectively, I have 500 left at the end of the day. Pretty easy, right? Pretty straightforward. Do your math. Learn your math. What's your BMR? What are you burning every day? I love talking to guests and saying, if an individual went into a financial advisor and said, hey, I've got this financial debt I need to get rid of. Can you help me? And that financial advisor said, well, yeah, I just need to know how much money you're making and how much money you're spending. And if that individual said, well, I have no idea what I make and I have no idea what I spend, that financial advisor is going to say, is that a problem? Absolutely. So if somebody comes to me and say, I'd like to get rid of some weight, and I'm like, and I say, awesome. What are you burning every day and what are you taking in? And if we have no idea, which I am going to dare say probably 90% of people don't know. They have no idea what they're burning and they have no idea what they're consuming. That might be a high guess, but I'm curious. Do you know what you burn every day? Do you know what you consume every day? And believe you me, I get people say, we're like, well, I just don't want to have to track my calories. I'm like, neither do I. Who likes balancing their budget, their checkbook? That's not a thing anymore, but who likes having to budget their finances? It's not fun, but guess what? Neither is tracking, and we can make it more fun. And it actually is fun if you know what you're doing and you approach it in a way of an opportunity and not something that is like a diet or you have to do. And believing me, I met with a guest last week who literally, when I started talking about calories, started having anxiety, eating disorders, and a lot of experience over the years of diets. And believe in me, I get it, but it's because we haven't truly understood this. And I believe that we can heal those relationships, and it doesn't have to be dreaded. It doesn't have to be, it actually is quite easy right now. You can say, hey, Siri, how many calories are in an apple? And Siri's going to tell me that there are probably 45 to 50 calories in an apple. She was listening. But you can also use lots of different apps. A lot of our things they have to be labeled, especially if they're packaged. But, Whole Foods, I love just to estimate. We know the amount of calories in a serving size of carbs and a serving size of protein, a serving size of fat. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the nutrition chapters. But knowing what you're consuming, and it's going to take some homework. It's going to take some trial and error. But I promise you, if you don't know, it's going to be a really frustrating road to use the scale. And if you're not setting a realistic goal, so this was my point in sharing all of this, I will do somebody's math, and 99.9% of the time, in fact, I used to teach this lecture every Monday for years. It would be like, I can't even remember what we called it, budget. But it was the first Monday lecture. It was like, hey, welcome to Movar. We're going to tell you, talk about the math of weight loss. And I was like, I left depressed. It was a really depressing lecture to teach on Monday. I love teaching it at the end of the week when guests have gone through, they've been broken down a little bit and they've been built up and they know that they're strong and that they can do anything. And then I teach it to them and they're like, okay, I can do this. But, at 99.9% of the time, when we go through the math of somebody's goal, it's completely unrealistic. And I think, man, what would have happened? Oh, please try again. Sorry, Siri. What would have happened if this individual went home with these expectations? Well, it would have just been the same thing that happened. This is why we have the all or nothing mentality. I believe 100% is because of unrealistic expectations. It's like, I'm eating good, I'm working out, and then I get on the scale and I'm like, crap, what the heck? It's not working. It's working. It's just not how you want it to work. And honestly, maintaining your weight is hard. It takes work. And I'm telling you right now, the studies are showing more and more. It's like weight loss is not this. It's this kind of, maybe. And it's hard. Now, it's possible. It's doable. It absolutely is worth it. And I promise you, like a half a pound a week in a year from now, every single one of you would be thrilled with 25 pounds less. I mean, seriously, like a year goes by fast. It would be happy with 10 pounds less. How many times have we just been gaining, and we need to change that. So it's to me, it's a vital, inevitable, like you have to understand achievable, realistic expectations. Yeah, I'm obviously pretty passionate about it. You can tell because I just have dealt with it for so many years myself personally. In fact, I honestly, if I didn't know better, yeah, I would be completely frustrated and think like, oh my gosh, I exercise every day and I mean, I have access to food at the resort. I eat pretty good. I like healthy food. I'll have treats here and there and have some, days that are more than others, but I would be extremely frustrated. Now I'm honestly like, man, I am grateful that I don't weigh more. And I can have that. I can have that mindset when I get on the scale, and it's still hard, and I know better. So I just want you to know that it can be frustrating if you don't have realistic expectations. I explained the math. It's not complicated. Figure out your debt, and it's going to take some time. You can do some research to figure out what you're burning every day. Figure out what you're taking in every day, and you'll see the math, and you'll be able to set achievable goals. Okay, I'm going to quickly jump to that. Really was the longest one. I apologize because I am pretty passionate about that, and I am more than happy to help any of you if you would like to go more in depth with that. But the next thing is the relevant, and to be honest, we could skip all of the other ones. And I actually, in this week's stories or last week's stories, I think I started with talking about the relevant because it can be extremely powerful. I really believe that if we have a powerful why, the how takes care of itself. When people say, "Well, how do you control the temptations, or how do you avoid the temptations, or you just have more willpower than I have. I just don't have willpower, or I just don't have the desire to exercise." I'm like, believe you me, it's my life. I've been doing it for I've been exercising for as long as I can remember. I mean, probably since the age of 15, and I struggle every single day. But the only thing that I do it every single day because of my why. So, which is to feel good. It's powerful when you have a powerful why, and you hear stories like this all the time where maybe they had a life-threatening experience with themselves or with another individual. And when we realize how precious life is, we start taking it more serious. I know COVID was certainly a challenge for a lot of individuals. And to be honest, I think what an amazing opportunity to have us realize like how valuable life is and how valuable our health is and how we are the only people that can even do anything about it. So making your goal relevant to the things that are important to you. It's powerful. So I shared this a while ago, and I'm going to share it again. I heard this several years ago. I love this idea, but it's having your values, the things that are most important to you. Like think about your governing values, whether it be your family, your health, your relationships. Again, not just family, but maybe your friendships. the things that you value. It could be your religion. It could be, a variety of different things, your success, and then think about the things that you do every single day. So if I value my health, and for me, it's a top priority. It's not my number one priority, but it's up in the top 5. And so to me, if I value my health, but I'm not being active most days, I'm going to have this gap. And when I heard this several years ago, I loved the thought. Well, what we hear oftentimes is, I just want peace. I don't really care about the number. I don't really care about anything else. I just want to have peace. Well, when we take the things that are most important to us and the things that we are doing every day, and if those are in line, so if again, health is important to me and I'm exercising every day, I'm going to have peace. I'm not going to have this gap. When we have a gap, we experience pain. And none of us like to experience pain. And again, we're seeking peace. So I promise you that as you choose goals that are in line with the things that are most important to you, make sure that they're relevant. Make sure that those goals are like, for example, you may have the goal. And again, I'm just using my kind of more of a personal example. Health is important to me, but my family is a higher priority. So to me, if I'm spending multiple hours a day neglecting my family on my health, am I going to experience pain? So choosing goals. So if I were right now, this may be maybe when my kids were a little bit younger, I could potentially do this now that they're getting older. But if I wanted to have the goal of, maybe really seriously training for something like a serious race, and how to put a ton of time into it, I may have to spend some evenings, some mornings, some time during the day doing some training as opposed to being home and with my family. It actually probably is still not good time for me. I still have 4 kids home, and there's a lot of time away already with work. And, when I am home, I want to try and be with them as much as possible. So yeah, I think it's just needs to be relevant to the things that are important to you. And then the last thing, and I'll talk about the E and the R, making them smarter, but time bound. Put a deadline. One of the things, in fact, if you have been following my Instagram, which it's pretty sad, but I just started a Michelle. It's Michelle M. It could stand for Movara, but it actually stands for my middle name, Michelle, my maiden name, actually not my middle name, Michelle Meacham Kelch. But I've been sharing, we did a year-long competition, and there's multiple reasons why I wanted to. The main reason is personally, I would love to, just focus on my health in the way that I teach and preach, which is small and consistent and steady and time bound and achievable and realistic. And so that's why I put a year goal to this, and I wanted it to be realistic. And so the way to measure it is every single Sunday we've committed. I'm going to weigh myself ours is actually going to be, has been on Mondays. It's just the first day we started was a Monday. Our guests on Movara Home, they submit their weight every Sunday. Guests at the resort do a weekly weigh-in. But the way I'm measuring my goal is hopping on the scale every Monday. Now, I will hop on throughout the week, and this is a little off note, but sometimes I'll weigh periodically, and some days I'm like, oh my gosh, it went down, and I can be a little bit too confident. So it is a little there's some of the risk of weighing every single day. But I've committed to measuring at least the once a week, and I'm writing down every single week, and I know that even if my weight stays the same, to me that's a huge success. So I'm just tracking whether I maintain or lose, and it has been 7 or 8 weeks since we started, and it's like 0.2 ounces here, 0.2 ounces there, and I'm tracking my out, I'm tracking my in. And I promise you, I could be taking in a lot more than I am if I wasn't being mindful of this. So it's not like I'm, always, it's been a challenge, and the results are slow. They're very, very slow. There's been one week, I think it might've gone up, maybe a few weeks that it stayed the same, and it's just little. So to me, that's the realistic. It's achievable. I'm measuring. It's very specific. It's relevant because I know that I am a better mom. I am a better individual. It's important to me. It's important to my why. And that's where the willpower comes. It's not because I'm doing this competition, but at the end of the day, I know how I don't want to feel. And when it's relevant to what I want, it's easier. Not easy, easier. And we put a year goal to this. The deadline now, it is weekly that we're weighing, but it's a year from now. So, okay, the last two things I want to just touch on. It's the ER, the smarter to the SMART goals, because it's extremely important to regularly evaluate, be able to pivot, be able to switch goals, be able to recognize what's working, what you're struggling with, and not jump to conclusions. Listen to your body. It's a learning process. So again, it's that change that we talked about last week. And then the last is be prepared to adapt. Be prepared to revise, revisit, and I think revise. Be prepared to revise your goals if needed, because things are going to come up, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You'll get sick. You'll have work issues. You'll have relationship issues. You'll have physical issues. You're going to have something probably daily, if not weekly, if not daily. And it's always going to be something. So they're going to have to be continually revised, evaluated, but start with making specific goals. How are you going to measure them? Are you going to time yourself? Are you going to measure your push-ups or count your push-ups and measure your flexibility? I mean, it doesn't have to be the scale. You can do a tape measure and do inches, but have something that you're going to measure regularly. Make sure that, and I spent quite a bit of time, my passion is make sure it's achievable. Don't set yourself up to be frustrated, because the expectations of what we think should happen, I promise, are just different than the actual reality. And then again, make sure it's relevant to what's important to you. I hope that was helpful. I know there's power in setting SMART goals. This actually, tomorrow starts chapter 3, and it's overcoming procrastination, which, oh my goodness, I feel like I am not qualified to talk about, because I have struggled with procrastination. And maybe the qualification is I have learned ways to help me overcome procrastination. One of my favorite things that we're going to address next week, just as a little teaser, is overcoming the mental barriers to procrastination. So look forward to that. You'll get in your email box. If you're not getting the newsletters, make sure you subscribe to the newsletters. I'm going to get really good at these and have a link somewhere. I think this will be on YouTube. Again, bear with us. And I'm hoping that these will just get improved more and more throughout the year. And my goal is to have it be worth your time, so that this can be a really powerful tool in helping you write the story that you want to be living. So next week, look forward to overcoming procrastination. You can get on our Instagram for support. If you're on social media, we've have a couple people that have been brave, and they're using the hashtag Your2024Story, and they're sharing their goals. They're sharing how the changes that they want to overcome. And then next week, in fact, this last week, we did a little challenge of decluttering a space. And so you could post that and share it and be brave. I'm actually a big believer in putting yourself out there and inspiring other people. So I'm hoping that, again, you can use our social media. You can use the Facebook alumni page. Our Movara Home support group is amazing. But this podcast, hopefully, can also be a tool that can help you week to week and as you are writing your 2024 story. So peace out, and we'll see you for chapter 3.